Good evening, friends of the Bulkley Valley and beyond. My name is Thomas Tom Roper, and you are listening to CICK, Smithers Community Radio 93.9 on your FM dial. My program, On the Ropes, is broadcasting from the Cassia territory of the Giddimdum clan, home of the Wet'suwet'en. Well, there we have it. Welcome tonight to Friends of CICK. And tonight, we're very fortunate to have Taylor Bachrach, former mayor, former MP, and now a citizen of Smithers. Welcome, Taylor. Glad to have you aboard.
Good evening, Tom. I love your intro there. That's Thomas Tom Roper.
That's the guy who's trying to make a move on podcasts of the world. So this is our 40th podcast that we're bringing forward. And what we normally do, Taylor, is we try to find out, that's sort of the key, is why a person came to the Bulkley Valley. Like, it's strange that we've got 5,000 people living here after all these years. I've been here for 50 years, and there's still 5,000 people living in town. Why hasn't it become the greatest place in the north and all that type of stuff?
Well, so, It might be the greatest place in the north. Like, I wouldn't, write that off entirely.
No, definitely.
Why hasn't it boomed beyond what it is?
Yeah, well, I don't really need to know that answer, but I'm quite happy with it. And so what I'd like to do, Taylor, is kind of get that information from you. We'll start off, and I'll ask you, were you born in Smithers?
I wasn't, actually. I was born to the east of here, a few hundred kilometers, in a tiny little community called Dunster, which is between McBride and Valemount in the beautiful Robson Valley. Yeah. And my parents moved there in the early 70s. They were kind of back to the landers. And I went to a little 2-room elementary school, about 30 kids from kindergarten to grade 7, and then went to high school in McBride. My dad was a logger growing up, and my mom was a counselor. And it was a great upbringing and great place to grow up in a really rural setting. I think that's really been a big part of kind of forming who I am now as an adult.
Yes.
I went away to school in Victoria, and I met my wife, Michelle, there, and we had our first daughter, Ella. And, as soon as I had kids, I realized I really wanted them to have a bit of what I had growing up. Mm-hmm. Dunster was a bit small for Michelle's liking,
right?
I think they're and so Smithers kind of popped into our consciousness. We were looking for a mountain town. I really love skiing, and Michelle and I both really love being in the mountains, and so we looked all over at different little communities in the mountains that would give us that rural kind of environment, and then heard about Smithers, and all of a sudden the universe kind of started sending us all these signals, and we just went with it. Packed the U-Haul, packed the canoe and all the house plants and the 6-month-old baby into the U-Haul and drove up here. And haven't really looked back. It really feels like home now, over 20 years later.
Yeah.
We got here about 2005, I think.
That's a pretty interesting story, Taylor. And, when you go back, like, I was part of your parents' movement of, I came to Smithers with that goal, kind of like a back to the land. And I wanted to build a house, and I wanted to have a garden. And somehow Smithers got into my radar in the same sense. I was actually hitchhiking to Whitehorse, and I couldn't get a ride. And then I crossed the street, and the first ride I got took me to Fraser Lake, and I got a job at the mine. And that introduced me to Highway 16. And I never looked back from that either. I've been a lot of places looking around, but this is an amazing place to be.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I think in many ways it shares a lot of characteristics with where I grew up, which is partly why I feel so at home here, and why this is a landscape and a community that I'm so attached to.
It is kind of amazing. So, Taylor, like, when you moved on to McBride for high school and whatever, then you're sort of, working your way through, and you're kind of thinking to yourself in grade 10, 11, 12, what am I going to what can I do? What am I going to do? And then you're thinking, well, maybe I should just join my dad and we could have our own little company.
A little logging company. Why didn't I become a logger?
That's a question I would like to know.
I'm not sure. In many ways, that's been a great lifestyle for a lot of people. He had a bit of a love-hate relationship with it, I think. Mm-hmm. He loved being outside. He loved working hard, using his body. He was a buckerman, which is a really physically demanding job. You're using a chainsaw all day on a landing. And I still remember, going out to the block with him and just that whole experience, the smells and the sounds. And, it was I think it was a pretty exciting career.
Right.
Anyway, I ended up going to university and kind of ended up on a different track. I worked fighting forest fires and building hiking trails and all of that kind of thing. As a teenager, I worked in kitchens. I was a dishwasher and a prep cook. And then I ended up getting into kind of communications, and I worked in the conservation sector for a while. But the communications thing kind of stuck. And so I've bounced all over the place, but, doing communications, building websites, writing, that's been a part of my different roles for the past couple of decades. So,
right. It's interesting how that would develop, and like in my case, my dad had a shoe store and he wanted me to get in that business, but I just wanted to go north and I really wanted to be a mechanic. So it's kind of, I kind of take that back. When we were in Turkey, we had a little trip over there, and every person that we met was in the carpet business. And it was kind of like there was no other options, where in our world, it seems to be an endless amount of options. We're very fortunate that we were able to do that. So when you first came up here, Taylor, did you go right to Telkwa? Is that where you...
Yeah, we moved here and we wanted to buy a place, and we ended up buying a place out in Telkwa on Oak Crescent, and had a second daughter, and It was a great place to raise kids. And I ended up getting a seat on Telkwa Village Council. That's where I started in local government. So I served for 3 years on council in Telkwa.
How did you come up with that idea that you wanted to get into sort of a government helping role?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, growing up in a really small community where most of the community functions are done by volunteers, you learn a couple things. Like, one, you learn that if you don't step forward and contribute, then things aren't going to get done. Like, you have a responsibility as a resident of a place to not just take, but to give back.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then the other thing I think you learn is that you have to learn to work with people who see the world in different ways and find that commonality as neighbors. Mm-hmm. And I think both of those things are really useful when you get into local government.
Right.
Because communities are made up of different kinds of people. Right. And that's a really healthy thing.
Yes.
If everyone thought the same way, that's not a community, that's a cult.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you have to, amongst all these diverse people, you got to find a way to move forward together, to make decisions and grow as a community. Mm-hmm. And so I've always been really fascinated in that process, and I've always wanted to work to make the place where I live better. And, I think we face a lot of different issues as communities, as a province, as a country. And so to kind of dive into that realm of politics, which, has in some ways has become a dirty word, but really it's the art of living together, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And to try to find a place in that mix, working with your neighbors, trying to find a path forward, building on common values, identifying what we share in common, and then trying to have a conversation about where we're going to go together. Mm-hmm. I've always found that really fascinating. And I think a lot of it goes back to growing up in a small community, and, there's always tensions, there's always conflict at some level, but there's also this beautiful thing that happens where people put aside their differences and work together on things, whether it's building a community hall or responding to someone's house fire. Mm-hmm. We had a homestead way out in the bush at a place called Shear, which was it was in the middle of nowhere. It had like a 10-kilometer driveway. The nearest neighbor was miles away. And this is where my dad wanted to kind of carve this lifestyle out of the bush.
Right.
And we built as a family this big log house. And because he was logging and he was away a lot, my mom was often down there with us as kids by ourselves. And we had an outhouse. We didn't have any plumbing.
Right.
Didn't have electricity, didn't have a telephone, none of these amenities. And so we had an outhouse, and we used to put the ashes from the wood stove down the outhouse. And one day my mom put the ashes from the wood stove down the outhouse hole, and then we went to town, which is McBride. It's about 40 kilometers away. And while we were gone, the ashes caught fire. They were still hot, and they burned down the outhouse. And then they burned the lumber piles that were near the outhouse, close to the house itself.
Right.
And there was a fire lookout right close to there on a mountain called Sheer Point, and there was someone up on top of that fire lookout that saw this fire start.
No kidding.
And they managed to save the house. They got a chopper there with a Bambi bucket and managed to put it out. But
wow.
Yeah, it's a very distinct memory. So I don't know how that story came up. Oh, putting out house fires.
Yeah.
When there's a fire in a rural community and there's no fire department, you really lean on your neighbors, right? And you see people from all walks of life come together to help each other. And I can't think of a time in history when we need more of that, right?
Yeah. No, we need more of that at all times. And we have right now, like in Smithers, we're very fortunate to have a fire department, but it's volunteer. All these people are volunteer firefighters, and they put themselves in harm trying to help us. It's the same kind of community spirit that
Absolutely.
you're seeing in so many ways around this community. It's pretty amazing. It keeps us.
And I think that's the thing about Smithers that I really love is that the people who live here really want to live here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think more than a lot of communities, it's a place where people can see themselves staying for a long time. And as a result of that, people put down roots and they contribute to the community. So, we've got a lot of great amenities and great events and all those kind of things that are driven by volunteers, and great services like the fire department. Yeah. That's really people come together to help each other.
It's actually pretty amazing. So, Taylor, with this CICK, we are a radio station, so we do like to play songs. It's kind of one of our little extras that we have when we're in a discussion. And I've sent you some information, and you've made up a playlist. And so we've got a bunch of songs here, and I'd like to start off with Stan Rogers. Is there any reason that you had chosen Stan Rogers? Where did he come from?
Well, Stan Rogers is from the East Coast. I think he's a real...
he was actually born in Hamilton, believe it or not.
Oh, was he really?
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. I always knew him like in association with the East Coast, and his songs, a lot of them have like a real maritime feel.
They really do. Yeah.
So there you go, born in Hamilton. I don't actually know much about him. I never saw him in concert.
No.
I kind of fell in love with his music. I love folk music. I'm a little bit kind of old-fashioned in my musical tastes. And anyway...
Well,
Stan Rogers, he's a Canadian legend.
Yeah.
And he wrote these really great singable songs that you can kind of belt out. And this is one of them.
Well, it's hard to believe that he was caught in a plane fire in 1983. So we're talking, that's 42 years ago. And the man is still as popular now as he was in those days. So let's take a run at this song here and see if we can take a listen.
It's a long one. Brace yourself.
I would take the Northwest Passage to find the hand of Franklin reaching for the Beaufort Sea, tracing one warm line through a land so wide and savage, and make a Northwest Passage to the sea. Westward from the Davis Strait 'tis there 'twas said to lie, the sea route to the Orient for which so many died. Seeking gold and glory, leaving weathered, broken bones and a long forgotten lonely cairn of stones. Ah, for just one time I would take the Northwest Passage to find the hand of Franklin reaching for the Beaufort Sea, tracing one warm line through a land so wide and savage, and make a Northwest Passage to the sea. 3 centuries thereafter, I take passage overland in the footsteps of brave Kelso, where his sea of flowers began, watching cities rise before me, then behind me sink again. This tardiest explorer, driving hard across the plain. Ah, for just one time I would take the Northwest Passage to find the hand of Franklin reaching for the Beaufort Sea, tracing one warm line through a land so wide and savage, and make a Northwest Passage to the sea. And through the night behind the wheel, the mileage clicking west, I think upon Mackenzie, David Thompson, and the rest, who cracked the mountain ramparts and did show a path for me to race the roaring Fraser to the sea. Ah, for just one time I would take the Northwest Passage to find the hand of Franklin reaching for the Beaufort Sea, tracing one warm line through a land so wide and savage, and make a Northwest Passage to the sea. How then am I so different from the first men through this way? Like them, I left a settled life, I threw it all away, to seek a Northwest Passage at the call of many men, to find there but the road back home again. Ah, for just one time I would take the Northwest Passage to find the hand of Franklin reaching for the Beaufort Sea, tracing one warm line through a land so wide and savage, and make a Northwest Passage to the sea.
That's kind of a heavy song talking about the Northwest Patches and our guy Franklin up there, and that was quite a story when they found his boat. And the whole Arctic story is really a Canadian story. It's pretty interesting, that's for sure. That's a little long song, but it still
it is. As soon as it started, I was like, man, this is interesting choice for a 1 hour podcast. Yeah. But I don't know. It's a song that's always kind of spoken to me. I think what I take from it is that spirit of adventure and the fact that, that really lives in all of us. And, it means different things to different people, but right. That idea of kind of sticking it out there and experiencing new things and that whole piece around the Arctic, as somewhere that I've visited only once, but it's a pretty magical place. It really obviously it had a real hold on those explorers of that day. Although, I think they could have learned even more from the locals than they did.
Exactly, yeah.
And it's ironic. I know, even in the search for the ship,
Yeah.
when they did eventually find it, it was right where the Inuit had said it always was.
Right.
They knew the place with the masts sticking out of the ice.
Right.
And they're like, "Oh, you're interested in that? Why didn't you tell us?"
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, for people to live in the Arctic, and then for people to come from another area and think that they can live in the Arctic without any training or any understanding, it's kind of, I really was sort of against the British in that, with their attitude of superiority.
Yeah, I think it in many ways it kind of exemplifies the arrogance of colonization in general, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That it's not a very humble pursuit.
No.
It's about conquest.
Yeah.
And so if there's a bit of a dark side to that song and the spirit behind it, I think it's that. And we're living many of the consequences of that today. But things can be many things at once, right?
Yeah. Well, they have to be.
I take from it's about the spirit of adventure. And he's talking about, just driving across Canada and how that's an adventure to him, and kind of comparing it to that spirit of discovery.
Exactly. Well, we just came out of our return to Tuktoyaktuk. We did that last summer, and
fantastic.
We went up there for our honeymoon, so it was a pretty amazing trip. And when you're driving through that part of Canada, your chest is swelling because you're so proud to be Canadian and have this territory that is part of Canada that you're a part of, So it's kind of interesting. Well, we shouldn't go too long on this song because we got 3 more. But so let's just pick up where we left off. You're in Telkwa. You've bought a house. You've gone into municipal politics. And then I would say, from my vision, out of the blue, you decided, no, I'm moving to Smithers. And I'm going to run for the mayor.
Well, we moved to Smithers for the same reason many people move from Telkwa to Smithers, which is that eventually, driving back and forth 4 times a day with kids gets a bit, a bit much.
Yeah.
And so as our kids got older, we found ourselves driving more and more, and eventually made the move into town. And right around that time, there was a bunch of stuff happening politically. There was a municipal election coming up, but at the same time, there was this oil pipeline. Talk about deja vu all over again.
Yeah.
There was an oil pipeline that Enbridge wanted to push through from Alberta to Kitimat, and it would have crossed the Bulkley River upstream of where we live. And a lot of people, as you remember well, were pretty opposed to that idea. One of those people was a guy named Jim Davidson, who was a dairy farmer and former longtime mayor. And on the day of the filing deadline, Jim was roaming around Smithers looking for someone with a pulse who would throw his name in the ring and run against the incumbent. And someone told him that I had some experience in local politics in Telkwa and that I might be interested. And so he tracked me down and he said, I'd like you to think about jumping off a dock for me.
Right.
And
exactly.
We only had a couple hours to make up our minds. He insisted. He said, if you're even going to consider doing this, there's one thing that you have to do, and that's you got to ask your wife.
Yeah.
And so I called Michelle at the time, and the timing wasn't very good because she was right in the middle of something with the kids that was kind of stressful, and she usually prefers a little bit more runway to make big decisions like that.
Exactly.
But we found our way through it, and I ended up having the honor of representing this place as its mayor for 8 years. And,
that's pretty amazing, actually.
Yeah, it was a really, probably looking back on my time in politics, I think it was the most fulfilling of the roles that I've had the pleasure of having, and just getting to, this is such a dynamic community, someone once described it as a difference of opinion surrounded by mountains. I think that's a real strength.
Yeah.
And so getting to kind of be in the middle of that and feel the ebb and flow of different issues, and over 8 years, you make some mistakes and you have some wins, and there's some things you're proud of and some things you might do differently if you could go back. But it was such an honor to get to be part of that for that time. And I got to work with some amazing people, folks like Bill Goodacre, who's now left us, and others on council.
Right.
Anyway, I look back on it fondly.
That's was an amazing time, really, Taylor, and it's great that you had that opportunity. It's really great that you took that opportunity to get. I like the way you would mention it, sort of like as giving back when we're in a community. Like we're all, and I've kind of dealt with that in my head, trying to figure out what can we do when we go through life and we've got a job, we're making money, we get ourselves set up, and then this is where I'm struggling with the capitalist system, that when you reach this sort of comfortable level, why is it that there's a certain amount of people, and we're talking the 1%, that are just want to build up more money and build up more money with the rest of the world is having its problems, where we could actually be giving back. And that's really the statement, that we have to come to that point that it's not all about me, it's really about helping others. And that's what you're doing when you're in politics. There's a lot of flack around politics, no question about it. But it's still, you've stepped up. That's a lot different than a person that is just complaining about the problems and not really willing to step up.
Sure. I would say, Tom, that there's lots of different ways to contribute, right? Politics is only one of them.
Yeah.
And there's lots of folks who don't want to step into that fray for very obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the front is wide, so there's many ways to give back. And you were talking about, this system that we live in and the expectations that society places on us. One of the real fallacies at the heart of it all is that the thing that gives you the most satisfaction in life is that giving back and being connected to others. And it's like a whole bunch of stuff that you don't actually get with more money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can't be bought.
Once you've met your basic needs, the greatest fulfillment in life is being part of community and having that sense of purpose, right?
Right. And this fulfilling your needs is I've always kind of pushed that issue when you're coming out of school or when you're getting to a decision of how are you going to look after yourself in our society. And as you're able to do that, making the choices that you do, then that's the point where you can, at any point along the way, you can be giving back. There's always somebody that needs help along that trail,
Totally.
So, Taylor, now, 8 years as mayor is pretty substantial. You saw a lot of people, you traveled the province, and somehow you came up with the next decision, the next political decision, that you were going to go federal. Is that something, how did you get sort of wangled into that idea?
Yeah, good question. I think part of it is timing and circumstance, and part of it is that a lot of the issues that we were up against as a local government really had a strong influence from the federal and provincial governments.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it is just, when people ask you to step forward, I think, you have a bit of a responsibility to consider that. So one thing led to another, and I ended up stepping down as mayor partway through my third term and throwing my hat in the ring in the federal election back in 2019. And had the great honor of serving as member of parliament for Skeena Bulkley Valley, which is this storied part of Canada that's had some incredible leaders over the years, people like Frank Howard and Jim Fulton and Nathan and
Iona Campanola.
Yeah, Iona, absolutely. Yeah. And so it's a bit of a blur, to be frank with you.
Yeah.
It was a heck of a time to become member of parliament because I was elected in, I think it was the end of September or sometime in October, and just went to Ottawa for a little bit before the Christmas break, and then went back at the end of January, and was still kind of finding my way around and figuring out where the washroom was.
Yeah, exactly.
When the pandemic hit, right?
Yeah.
And I remember that moment really distinctly, and then flying home and spent pretty much a year learning to be a member of parliament virtually.
Yeah.
Which is a tough way to do it, because
exactly.
It's really a job that a lot of it hinges on being there in person and being part of the conversation in person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then, of course, everything coming out of the pandemic, like I think we'll look back on it and see that it was one of the more challenging times in our country.
Yeah, in our history.
Yeah.
Yeah, it certainly was. And then, of course, you're also challenged with your family and your children going to school. What's going to happen during the pandemic? Are we going to get sick? And, my father was aged out at that time, and then he passed away in the pandemic, and then we couldn't have a service for him or look after him or whatever.
Yeah.
It was really a tough time for everyone. And not just me, but we all faced some type of challenge during that period of time.
Totally. Yeah, and I think of people, who are working in these essential services in grocery stores and things like that rode public transit to work and were exposed to all kinds of things, and frontline workers. Like, it was a really stressful, anxious time for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so that could be 2 more podcasts just talking about that period in time. It also feels like a bit of a distant memory now.
Yeah.
But of course, some aspects of it are still with us.
So you actually put in 2 terms. You got 8 years in as the MP?
I was in for just less than 6 years as MP.
Right.
And as you well know, wasn't successful in the 3rd election in April of last year.
Right.
And and so all of a sudden I was kind of faced with not really having a role in politics anymore, which is to be honest, it's a bit of a jarring experience.
Yes, I can imagine.
Don't recommend it. No. But you also get into politics knowing that it's this very uncertain and often volatile environment to make your vocation, right? Like it's something that you for many people isn't there forever.
No.
And you have the honor of serving in a role for a period of time, and you make the most of it that you can, and you try to do right by people. And, there's only 3 ways to get out of politics. And
hopefully.
One of them you really want to avoid.
Yeah, that one we do want to avoid.
Yeah. But anyway, it's kind of water under the bridge now. And I'm spending a lot more time here in Smithers, which is
actually kind of nice, really. I think, in the sense that it gives you a chance to sort of reintegrate yourself directly.
Back in the community. The interesting thing about representing Skeena is that it's huge, right? It's one of the biggest ridings in Canada, and one of the greatest, one of the most enjoyable parts. Was getting to know all of these far-flung communities that I don't know if I would have had a chance to make it to otherwise.
Yeah.
And certainly wouldn't have gotten to know the fabric of their communities and the people in the way that I did. So I'm missing that aspect. I'm liking being at home for other reasons.
Yeah.
There's less travel, less jet lag, all of that.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
There's lots of ways to contribute, and I'm finding lots of other things to spend.
Yeah, the one door closes and another door opens. You're into a whole new world now with the politics certainly behind you. But life has got a lot of politics in it. Doesn't matter what group you get into. There's always something going on there. I was thinking that was one of your great benefits, was to be able to go to these communities like Atlin and the far away places. I had a chance myself to kind of fiddle around in a couple of them, and I just loved it. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
And I see British Columbia as a place that I'm in love with, but for some reason it's still Smithers that sticks in my heart. I'm not ready to pick up and move somewhere, So I kind of thought that was a good advantage for you to have that,
Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day, that it would be fun to just put aside an entire day to phone all of the folks that I met in these far-flung communities that I really enjoyed getting to know a little bit. Because what happens is, as much as you intend to stay in touch,
there's too much going on.
If you're not visiting once a year, if you're not working on issues together and advocating for things, it's easy to never see people again, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And there's some really special people out there.
I can totally agree with you on that. Okay, well, we've got to get another song in, because we're having too much fun here.
Do it.
So I've got this Cor Blund song, and you picked it out as The Truth.
Truth Comes Out.
Truth Comes Out.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite. He's like one of my favorite Canadian musicians.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that.
And this song, it's kind of a haunting song, actually, but maybe we can listen to it, and then I'll tell you my thoughts on it.
That sounds good. You knew he was in town.
I went and saw him at the Roy Theatre.
At the Roy,
yeah, it was great.
That was pretty cool. we were pretty fortunate. Okay, I'll give her a click here.
Truth comes out as the fire burns low. It comes to light as only embers glow. The whiskey talks, the west wind moans in the night. The deadfalls gathered and the branches are cut. The kindling crackles and the smoke curls up. The small sticks catch and the bigger stuff will burn. Chinook dies down as the dark descends, and the pine is burned and the ashes cleanse. The message smolders, is lost but finally sent. Well, Connie says she never seen the cougar so bold. They're coming in the yard and they're stealing young colts, and they drag him in the brush with the claws sunk in their nose. The weather's been funny 30 years or so. The winter's got warm and not as much snow. Hear the big cats coming 'cause there's nowhere left to go. You gotta look out for bear when you're fishing on Lee's Creek. They'll come round the bend and they'll make your knees weak. There's grizzlies where there was no grizzly bears before. From the ghosts from the graves, the grandfathers tell us that the mouths of the caves, only old chiefs older than Jesus can save us now. If we're lucky. A white man light a big fire, stay cold. A red man's warmer, but the old man's old. The antelope seeks the buffalo in the night. Yeah, the antelope mourns the buffalo in the night. Look out for bear when you're fishing on Lee's Creek. They'll come round the bend and they'll make your knees weak. There's grizzlies where there was no grizzly bears before. The truth comes out as the fire burns low. It comes to light as only embers glow. The antelope mourns the buffalo in the night.
That statement, the antelope mourns the buffalo in the night.
He's coming back for more, Tom.
Oh, yeah, that
Yeah.
chord once in. I didn't have them closed down well enough. The antelope mourns the buffalo in the night. That's a pretty cool statement. Is that part of the song that you, like you said, it's a little bit mournful, but there's a lot of mourning in the loss of the buffalo, and we're trying to bring the buffalo back. I kind of thought that was a good song.
I think it's a lament for the loss of wild places. And he's so skilled at putting words to that in a really kind of poetic way, capturing what I think a lot of people are feeling, which is especially people who have lived close to the land or have had a lifestyle that's closer to wild places and nature.
Yeah.
And that's what really spoke to me, because that's something that I really feel deeply. As someone who grew up out in the bush and was taught from a young age this
respect.
Respect and also a love for wild places, right? Yeah. And you know, I think he's in a unique position as a country singer. He's able to reach, you know, an audience that, you know, maybe the environmental community doesn't reach as easily because of the political world that we live in.
Yeah.
But, some of the people who feel that sense of loss most viscerally are ranchers and guide outfitters and hunters and trappers and people who have really spent a lot of time out there. And they know, the big change that we're all talking about is climate change.
Yeah.
And there's no one who has seen those changes more closely and more intimately than people who are out on the land. You look at the last couple of weeks here in the Bulkley Valley, there's no snow on the ground out there. It's early February. Yeah. And we had, 10, 12, 14 degrees outside. I don't know what the high was the last week. What was it?
It was about that. I think it was more, about 10.
About 10, yeah. So we're seeing a lot of change. And, we could get into it. But I think it's worth just feeling it.
Yeah.
And that's what that song is about. To me, anyway.
Yeah.
Truth comes out as the fire burns low.
Yeah.
It comes to light as only embers glow. It's really just naming it.
Yeah.
And it's okay to feel that sense of loss, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm actually just reading that book by Wayne Sawchuk, Crossing the Divide, and how he's got the people together in that area to form this group, this Musqueam Kachika land-based protected area, and it's incredible that they've been able to sort of pull that off. And it sounds like, the place to go in the province where you're not going to run into roads is pretty incredible in that point. So, anyways, I won't go too deep in that, but because I want to sort of drag in right now is your canoe, like that part of your life. It started in Dunster? Was your father and mother?
It did. My family, we weren't canoeists.
Right.
But somewhere along the way, I fell in love with the canoe.
Right.
I had a neighbor, a fellow named Dave Saleka, who did a really long wilderness canoe adventure as a young man with his then girlfriend.
Right.
Now partner. And they started, I think it was on the old Canoe Road.
Yeah, the canal.
Canal Road, is that how you say it?
Yeah, Canoe.
So that's on the west side of the Continental Divide in the Yukon. Mm-hmm. They started there in the winter, pulling an 18-foot canoe on a sled with snowshoes.
Yeah.
And they pulled it over the snow, up and over the Continental Divide to the headwaters of the Nahanni, and then waited till spring and then paddled out the Nahanni to the Mackenzie. I was always inspired by that story. And then living on the Upper Fraser, eventually I got out canoeing on the river, and it's just such a beautiful way to travel. And so ever since I was kind of in my late teens, canoes have been a big part of my life. I in my 20s, I bought a big Clipper Prospector Kevlar canoe, the most expensive one I could find, and went on a big trip up in the Arctic on the Coppermine River with my roommate from university, and then spent the next 10 years trying to paddle as many rivers and lakes as we could. It was a big part of
your life.
Our family, with our kids growing up. We had both our kids in the canoe and did a lot of canoe camping, and so
that's pretty awesome.
It's become a real theme.
So the part that I always thought was kind of cool, Taylor, was when you came home from your political moments in Ottawa, you would travel with the canoe down the Skeena and the Bulkley, and you would meet constituents along the way. And I thought that was pretty unusual. I bet you if you checked with the other 275 MPs, you would have probably be the only one doing that. How did you come up with that idea? It seems so original.
In a riding like Skeena, you've got to spend all summer visiting communities.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'll never get to them all. And I made a pledge at the beginning of that MP journey that I was going to try to visit every single little community, no matter how small.
Wow.
And so you spend the whole summer traveling and working, right?
Yeah.
And so I kind of wanted to find some way to bring some of myself into it and to have some recreation and relaxation kind of mixed in with the work, right? And so from Kispiox Valley down to Terrace, there's about 7 different communities. And so I started for 3 years in a row. I would get in my little solo canoe and take 5-6 days and paddle down the Skeena and visit all those little communities, many of them indigenous villages, and just connect with people, walk around, see who I could bump into. There weren't like planned meetings ahead of time. It was all spontaneous. But
that's so cool.
Yeah. So from that, I came up with this idea, and because the Skeena and the Bulkley River have been a big part of my life the last 2 decades. And when it looked like the next election was probably going to go south on me, I started thinking about, if I had more time, what is it that would really make my heart sing? Like how could I recover from this time in politics and kind of get grounded, get my head straight,
right.
And get back to basics. And so I thought, it's probably one of the only times in my life I'll have this long stretch when I could do a big trip.
Right.
And so I started dreaming of this trip, and I kind of happened on the idea by accident, just looking at satellite images of the upper Bulkley Nanica Lake, which is probably an area you're familiar with, and,
I am, yeah.
and just noticed how close it is to a place called Canoe, which is on the coast. And I'm like, man, like if you go down the river, you connect to the coast eventually. The river goes into the ocean. If you go down the ocean, you get to Canoe.
Yeah.
Like, is there a way you could hop in your canoe here in Smithers, go down the Bulkley River, go down the Skeena River to the ocean, hang a left, go down the coast to Canoe, and then hump your gear up and over that set of mountains to Nanica Lake, and then paddle all the way home again.
Wow.
And once that idea kind of got into my head, I couldn't really get rid of it.
Yeah.
And so spent probably a good part of a year kind of planning it out. And then I had a chance to do it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
So last July, I put my canoe on this little set of wheels, and pulled it right from my house up on 13th Avenue down to the Bulkley River, which is, I don't know, maybe 500 meters.
Right.
And put all my gear in it and headed down the river. And 34 days later, I pulled out on that very same gravel bar and pulled my canoe up to the house.
Right. Wow. That's pretty impressive. That's pretty crazy. So you must have had like CBC were out with the cameramen and everybody's filming you running to the next town, getting a shot of you. You were on
I
national
escaped
news?
pretty much entirely unscathed. No, I just, there wasn't a ton of attention. I didn't really tell many people. That, Like I told people I wanted to do it, but,
people would think, man,
wasn't a big hullabaloo around the actual trip itself.
Yeah.
But one of the neat things is that I had these relationships in little places like Hartley Bay from when I was MP. And so,
exactly.
You do go through a lot of communities along the way. So whether it was running into fishermen on the river or, staying at different people's places along the way.
Right.
One of the most special connections was a guy that I met shortly before the trip named Spencer Greening, and he's an anthropologist, and he's actually Gitgat by ancestry. So, so the people who are from that Hartley Bay area, and he's done all his research on this migration out of Temleham near what is now the Hazeltons.
Right.
Thousands of years ago, people left that area and went down the river, and some of them went down the Skeena and up the Exdal River and over the mountains to Hartley Bay, which was the route that I was going to follow.
Right.
And so I had a chance on my trip to visit him. He built a cabin in Old Town, which is right in Kitkiata Inlet. And so when I came over that portage from the Exdal River and then down the Qual River, he and his family hosted me for a couple days, and it was really
special.
lovely.
Yeah. Amazing, actually, Taylor. And that goes back to the opportunities that you've had where you've met various people by being their representative in Parliament, which is kind of it's a cool opportunity, that you went through there. It was very, very, it was awful hard work, but it was also had enjoyable moments to it that could fulfill a bit of your life with those memories,
Yeah, it was a lot of things all at once.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
But the people, it's definitely the most. That's one of the most fulfilling parts and memorable parts is the people that you meet along the way.
Yeah, exactly.
At the same time, you also meet with people in all kinds of tense situations too, right?
Yeah.
And you deal with some pretty difficult issues, and sometimes people aren't super happy. So, there's an aspect of it that's
not all much.
That's a bit more challenging too. But
exactly.
Man, there's a lot of good people out there.
Okay, well, let's throw in another song because we're running along real nicely. I don't know if we'll get our fourth song in, but I've got the Grand Coulee Dam with Woody Guthrie, or we could try Goodbye with Steve Earle. Which one are you?
Oh, I don't know.
That's a tough decision.
Yeah.
Well, let's
we could try the Great Grand Coulee Dam. I got some stuff to say about that. This is a song that my dad sang to me as a kid.
Okay, yeah.
And he introduced me to Woody Guthrie. My dad's from California. He's an American by birth. Now a proud Canadian. And this was a song I kind of grew up with, and then I sang to our kids when they were growing up.
That's pretty cool.
It's a folk song from, I'd say, the early 1940s.
Wow. It's going back. Yeah, Woody Guthrie, if you want to be in folk singing, you got to know a little bit about this guy. Let's give him a show.
Well, the world has 7 wonders that the travelers always tell. Some gardens and some towers, I guess you know them well. But now the greatest wonder is in Uncle Sam's fair land. It's that King Columbia River and the big Grand Coulee Dam. She heads up the Canadian Rockies where the rippling waters glide, comes a-rumbling down the canyon to meet that salty tide of the wide Pacific Ocean where the sun sets in the west, and the big Grand Coulee country in the land I love the best. In the misty crystal glitter of that wild and windward spray, men have fought the pounding waters and met a watery grave. Well, she tore their boats to splinters, but she gave men dreams to dream of the day the Coulee Dam would cross that wild and wasted stream. Uncle Sam took up the challenge in the year of 33 for the farmer and the factory and all of you and me. He said, roll along Columbia, you can ramble to the sea, but a river while you're rambling, you can do some work for me. Now in Washington and Oregon, you hear the factories hum, making chrome and making manganese and light aluminum. And their rowers are flying fortress now to fight for Uncle Sam, spawned up on the King Columbia by the big Grand Coulee Dam. In the misty crystal glitter of that wild and windward spray, men have fought the pounding waters, they met a watery grave. Well, she tore their boats to splinters, but she gave men dreams to dream of the day the Coulee Dam would cross that wild and wasted stream.
Now, I just finished a book about David Thompson, and he was very close to claiming that territory down in Washington, Oregon on the Columbia River. And unfortunately, we weren't there quick enough, as that was when the couple of guys were ahead of him, Lewis and Clark, and they sort of ended up claiming that area.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting, and the Columbia River must have been one of the most beautiful rivers in the world.
Must have been.
Now it's got 6 or 8 or 10 dams on it, and it's completely changed itself down.
One of its headwaters is really close to where I grew up in Valemount. So Kinbasket Lake, with the reservoir, is part of the Columbia system.
Wow.
And amazing to think about what it would have been like back in the day. The thing I find kind of amusing about that song, he was actually hired in 1941 by the power company. I forget the name of the power company.
Right.
To travel around writing folk songs about the promise of public power.
Right.
And it's interesting back then, and it's reflected in the lyrics. Like it's a time at which there was this real idea that nature was just wasted unless you did something with it, right?
Yeah.
And, he has that line in there, that wild and wasted stream.
Yeah.
And, of course, the Columbia was home to millions and millions of wild salmon, and it just, supported this incredibly diverse ecosystem. And at the time, it was really just seen in this kind of utilitarian way as a way to create power and industry. And, I think all these years later, with 8 billion people on the planet, I hope we've kind of come to realize that it's a little bit more complicated than that, and there's this real value to these places aside from their use by humans.
Yeah.
And I think we have. You look at Site C, right? Of course, this big public power project. All those years later, decades later, and I was trying to think. It came online without a big celebration.
Yeah.
I was trying to think about someone hiring a recording artist to write songs about Site C.
Right.
And it's
kind of like Woody.
Well, like Bryan Adams or something. Christy
yeah.
Clark could hire Bryan Adams to write about how great Site C was.
Right.
Of course, everything's more complex than at first glance. But I do think that, we need a bit more of a nuanced look at these things than just the idea that the natural world is there for our exploitation.
Yeah.
And that the highest and best use of everything is to develop it. Right?
Yeah.
We got to meet our needs. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But there's a cost to all these things too.
Yeah. No, it's extremely interesting where we are right now in this in our system, and of course we're having lots of trouble with the American side of our partnership. How we were able to sort of dismantle that has been amazing. We're living in that moment, which no one in the last 50 or even 75 years could even comprehend, that we would be in this position where it's actually an existential threat, really, that they want to take us over. If anybody can ever mention that 51st state, it's kind of, you just think it's a joke, but it's kind of scary, really, that whole program.
Absolutely. We're living in a time of madmen, right? And the last time the world faced that, it caused incredible strife, and that's something that my grandfather was a part of as a soldier, a member of the armed forces. He was in a bomber. He was a navigator in a short Sterling bomber, flying bombing raids over occupied France.
Wow.
So, man, I sure hope we're not heading that direction now.
Man, you are not kidding. Yeah.
If we can find some way to avoid that, we don't want our kids and our grandkids to have to inherit that kind of mess.
No, it is a mess as it is, but that style of mess is going to be. It seems now that this the nuclear disarmament treaty is coming to the end, and all that type of stuff is just leading for smaller countries to want to get a nuclear weapon now. So we're forcing ourselves down this route that we really don't need to be going. It's unfortunate, really unfortunate. But these are very heavy subjects.
Yeah, I was going to say, hell of a way to end the show there, Tom.
Well, let's not complete it. We've still got a couple minutes left. Just tell me a little bit more about your future. Like you were on the Nass River last year.
I was up on the Dees River actually in October. I took my canoe up there and spent 3 days by myself paddling. I paddled down the Blue River, which is a tributary of the Dees, and then down the Dees to Lower Post, Dalu.
Right.
For the past number of months, I've had the pleasure of working with the Casca people on an initiative to protect a large part of their ancestral territory in British Columbia,
right?
Which actually includes the Muskwa-Kachika area that you were talking about earlier,
imagine, yeah,
and would increase the level of protection in that area,
right?
And they've got this beautiful, really inclusive vision for the future of that land. To set it aside and have it be a place where cultural activities can continue to take place for young Casca, where tourism can happen and outdoor recreation, and they can build a conservation economy that's based on functioning ecosystems. And I just think it's a remarkable vision, and I feel really honored to have a chance to work with them on it.
That sounds pretty exciting, Taylor. It really does.
Yeah, so the Dees River is kind of on the western boundary of this protected area called Dene Kekusan, which translates in Casca to always will be there.
Right. So, well, listen, Taylor, there's no doubt that you and I could have several podcasts on your life and the adventures that you get yourself into and things that you're going to do. But we've kind of come to the end of our time.
The end of our time together.
That's right. So I'd like to, first of all, thank you very much for coming down and sharing a little bit of your life with my listeners. They really like to know what's going on in the Bulkley Valley and why people come to this beautiful area. And so I would just say to my listeners, just remember that we are always archived and smithersradio.com. And next session on February 23rd, we're going to have as our guest Christoph Dieselbergen, and he's going to talk about Dietzelbinger.
Yeah.
He's going to talk about solar.
Okay, there we go.
His EV car and his connection to that end of it. So
fantastic.
It should be kind of interesting.
That's great. I had a chance. Christoph is a ski guide, a mountain guide, and I had a chance to ski with him a couple of springs ago up at his chalet in the Bernie Hat, or in the house and range. Bernie Chalet. It was beautiful. Beautiful,
amazing. Okay. So thanks
so much, down. Tom. It was great talking, and boy, the time flies by. And thanks for what you're doing here in the Valley. You're involved in some really important work, and maybe someday I'll have a podcast I can invite you on to talk about the things that motivate you and the ways that you're giving back to this place.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll just close out with our outro, and we're ready to go.
You have been listening to On the Ropes, Smithers Community Radio, CICK 93.9 on your FM dial. I'm your host, Thomas Tom Roper, and we will see you on the flip side.